Vindicator Battle Tanks. Silence reigned. The command and control room was in such a state of shock that none spoke, none moved. The only sound that could be heard was the constant blip and ping of all the many screens and ancient technology in the room. Finally, after wetting his lips to try to sound more stoic than he felt, the commander broke the silence. "What colour is their armour? What is their heraldry?" Inside his mind, the one sentence echoed endlessly. "Please not yellow. Anything but yellow." The commander's second nodded and looked into his screens again before raising his head to look directly at his lord. "They are green." The commander filled his lungs long and low, and then exhaled. "Rafe, they might just hold out." "What shade? What heraldry?" he repeated. Usually he would chew his subordinate out for the lack of a full and complete answer. But not today. "Green, my lord. With a sword with wings?" The second looked up just in time to see his commander's face become ashen, and one word quietly and totally unbidden dropped from between his lips. "No." The planet of Baldermort had held for years now. The plains and crags, seas and prairies were all back in Imperial control, but here and there pockets of resistance held out, and none were as formidable as the Hive of Maldran, after which the entire system had been renamed in one of the many sweeping changes that had occurred throughout its long history. It usually happened when some overblown tin-pot bureaucrat saw too much of themselves and attempted to gain immortality by renaming a planet or city or the like. Thus had a prefect renamed this city and the world after himself. He was Maldar. Thus was the Hive and planet now called Maldran. He, like so many before him, never encompassed that what they had done would only later be replaced by the newest big shot. It was way of things out on the fringe, utterly at the mercy of the whims of the Administratum or Munitorum or Ministorum. It did not matter which wing caused issues. There would always be more. Always be the heavy yoke of the uncaring rule of the Imperium. They gave so little. They took so much. And so it had not taken long for the people of Baldermort to be coaxed away from this oh-so-abusive parent. Only 2 generations since contact, but the planet and all of its population had declared for the Tau Empire. That is when a large threat appeared on the Tau border. They would not say what it was to the people of Baldermort, nor did it really matter. All the people of Baldermort knew was that they had seceded from the tyranny of the Imperium, but had no support from the Tau. They could send nothing but a few shield generators before all support was cut. And thus it was that the Tau shield technology had proved a boon beyond estimation, because they were the only thing holding up the defenses of the Hives. The guard elements that had been sent to take back the world had stalled before all of them. None could gain the mass firepower to even dent the shielding, as they were primarily infantry regiments sent to take back the world. The commander looked out at his walls, the glorious blue shimmering shield that had saved them from all prior attacks, and his hands shook. For he had suspected that Astartes would be sent eventually. Had that sit like a rock in his stomach for months now, killing his appetite, interrupting his dreams. He was exhausted, but in some small, strange way, he felt a pang of pride. He had been right after all. They had come. He had forgone the religion of his grandfathers, did not believe in the hypothetical godhood of a being reclining on a golden throne somewhere else in the universe. But on this day, he wished he had some higher power to call upon, to assist him, to at least ease the pathway to the inevitable. For all the benefits of the concept of the greater good, in these instances, it proved cold comfort. And his worst nightmares became realized almost immediately. As soon as the battle barges of the Astartes were in orbit, the bombardment began. The shields took it because they diffused a huge energy across a large area, but only just. It was when a storm rose up and covered the entire continent that he felt himself and his people safe, if only for the duration of the storm. He could not have been more wrong. Under the cover of said storm, an entire column of armor had been dropped to the surface by the battle barges in orbit, and before the skies were even clear, they began their rush toward the walls of the hive. With the atmospheric disturbance playing havoc with their targeting systems, due to the rare composition of the dust thrown into the air, there was nothing the defenders could do. Nothing. The armored column, all in green, all deadly, all arranged and driven with perfect precision, simply drove up to the outer shields, and then unleashed hell. The lead 3 Vindicators all fired their huge Demolisher Cannons as one at the same place. The shield was torn apart and dropped, overloaded by the point-blank concentration of the most awe-inspiring destructive volley the commander had ever witnessed. Worse than this. As the commander looked on, the Vindicators then simply rolled forward to near point-blank range with his walls, and went through exactly the same process. A triad of them firing into one space, the one place, utterly smashing the bastion walls. Then they simply rolled over the rubble and into the hive. The Vindicators were smaller than many armoured vehicles and could go wherever the larger Land Raiders and Repulsors or Executioners could not. And within hours, the entire hive was denuded of all of its hardpoints, bastions, bunkers and resistance. In less than a day, the hive was indisputably under Imperial control once more. And as hordes of Imperial guards screamed and tore through the entire place, pillaging and punishing the traitors as they went, the Dark Angels merely trundled out onto the plains and were picked up again, to be taken to their next battle, their next war. Welcome, gentle listener. I am Baldermort, your faithful servant, and I wish to introduce you to the important factions, forces, and war gear of the Warhammer 40k universe, the grim darkness of the far future, where there is no time for peace, there is only time for war. And today, we are to discuss one of the most powerful weapons at the command of the Astartes, the Demolisher Cannon. Now, it just so happens to come with a handy tank chassis around it, so it can be moved about more easily. Ingenious, eh? But all jocularity aside, this vehicle has always been a firm favourite of mine for a plethora of reasons. The simple lines, the absolute economy of its design. It really is just a cannon on a glorified armoured wagon. And so, as usual, for the very basics, let us lean on existing wisdom. To quote, Vindicators. The Vindicator is a siege tank that boasts one of the most devastating weapons in the Space Marine's arsenal, the Demolisher Cannon. Having additional armor plating and a slab-like siege shield at its fore, the Vindicator is exceptionally durable, able to plough forward into enemy fire or plug a gap in a sundered wall with little fear to its own safety. Those who face the Vindicator in battle are less fortunate. Though comparatively short-ranged, the Demolisher Cannon's payload is so devastatingly powerful that a single shot can reduce the most formidable tank or bunker complex to a smoking shell, annihilating entire squads of enemy infantry or even smash the leg from a super heavy war engine and send it toppling down in ruin. And now let us discuss that glorious cannon. The Demolisher Cannon is a short-range, large-bore ballistic cannon utilized through the Imperium's military forces on some of their most powerful armored vehicles. Mounted on the Lehman Russ Demolisher, Thunder a siege tank, which I'll have to look up, as I don't know that one. Exciting. And of course, the Space Marine Vindicator. The Demolisher Cannon is a weapon designed to get up close and personal before it is fired. It is a weapon of choice when faced with dug-in enemy infantry in a dense environment such as urban warfare or the siege of a fortified enemy stronghold. The terrific blast unleashed by the detonation of the huge Demolisher shells is often sufficient to bring down buildings in which the enemy take cover, crushing them beneath tons of fallen masonry. It is amongst the strongest weapons fielded by the Imperial Guard at the regimental level, and is highly effective when utilized for smashing bunkers, siege warfare, and urban bombardment. The sheer damage this weapon is capable of causing is enough reason to risk firing at close range at an enemy position. The Demolisher Cannon's ammunition is a large caliber, rocket-assisted siege shell, larger than that used in the battle cannon, composed of an armored piercing tip, heavy shell casing, and large explosive charge. Each shell's rocket engine, fueled by a solid propellant, is shaped to control time and rate of burn for maximum accuracy. In order to avoid the build-up of rocket backblast, this gas is vented when the cannon is fired to prevent the barrel from deforming or bursting from the overpressure. Once fired, the shell is designed to explode microseconds after penetration, achieving the maximum damage to the target structure and its occupants. The Demolisher Cannon is most often used in bunker-busting role, by driving up close to enemy fortifications and firing into them at very short range, and allowing Allied forces to assault through the breach. They are also used in jungle warfare, or any other situation where surprise, close, overwhelming firepower may be of use. There is one main variant of this vehicle, the Vindicator Laser Destroyer. Tearing through the armor plating of enemy vehicles, the Vindicator Laser Destroyer array was a potent weapon of destruction. First retrofitted into the heavily armored Deimos pattern Vindicator chassis during the dark days of the Horus Heresy, several Space Marine legions took to fielding this variant as a mainline battle tank, proving itself on many occasions as an able tank hunter. After millennia of brutal warfare across the galaxy, it is still in favor with the Space Marine chapters, the Vindicator Laser Destructor continuing to bring retribution to the enemies of mankind. All Vindicators can be given a fortified dozer blade, called a siege shield, the heavy armor plating on its front, a hunter-killer missile, which is certainly not to be scoffed at, and smoke launchers or a searchlight. End quote. Now, the Vindicator is one of the many vehicles that is effectively just a modified Rhino. The Stalker, Hunter, Whirlwind, and Predator battle tanks are all from the same family as the Vindicator. And don't worry, we will get into all of them as time progresses. Taken from STCs, that is standard template constructs, or constructors, depending on the situation. Which means that these tanks are of ancient provenance, taken from the old files left behind by humanity from its golden age of technology, that the Imperium and all of mankind generally call the Dark Age of technology now. But we shall get into the history and the current state of technology soon, when we cover the Adeptus Mechanicus. It has been delayed, as I can have issues with sound. I'm not very bright, it seems, and modifying voices to sound more robotic is something I'm still wrestling with, but getting somewhere. But I hope to be able to devote time to when I take a short break, when we hit the magical number. I will get this done. But I digress. These gloriously simple tanks are but a tracked box with a huge cannon attached. Functional and efficient. But it is in its cannon that the true mirth can be seen. For there are few tanks that I own that will draw fire as fast as this wee fellow. Because if he is ignored, as some have done to their chagrin, then he can exact a mighty toll on the enemy. And what a horror they must be when confronted. For they were designed not only for siege warfare, but close quarters support. So can you just imagine being in a city battle, hunkered down in a building or fortification, believing yourself invulnerable? The next moment, a small tank wheels around a corner at near point-blank range, and immediately unloads on your hardpoint, annihilating it there and then. The Vindicator. don't enter a siege without one. I have been Baldermort, your faithful servant. I hope you've enjoyed this brief introduction to Vindicator Battle Tanks. If so, then please consider liking and subscribing. If you do, then hit the notifications button, as I would not want you to miss out. If you see the worth in what we are doing, then do also consider joining our Patreon, or giving the video a share if that is beyond your present scope. It will be a great boon. Now, no matter what you do today, do try to make some time for fun. Toodaloo.